Hey, English 104 students, Cody Miller here again with another video, of course, shifting into that online learning stage. I want to walk you through a PDF that I'm asking you to look at for I believe it's a body paragraph assignment. Yep, I'm looking at my other screen, my apologies. What I'm going to be asking you to do is understand what the three I's are. And so the three I's are when we integrate a source or when we bring a source into a body paragraph, we surround it with two I's and integrate it with another. So that gives us the three I's all together. So if we look at our PDF here, let me share our screen. So these are our three I's. So when we're using quotations, when we're trying to bring a source into a body paragraph, this is also if we're paraphrasing or even when we're summarizing, but generally when we are paraphrasing or quoting, you're going to have an introduction. So we're going to introduce a quote or a paraphrase. We're going to integrate a source or a paraphrase, as well as interpret a quote or a paraphrase. So quotations, right? Remember, direct wording from a source. When we bring that information in to a body paragraph, we've got to do some specific work. We already know some of that work as of now, which is the ACT, right? And what that means is you are helping us understand who the author of that quote is, what the title is of the essay the quote comes from, and their credentials, right? So the ACTs in that case. And then you do need to give us a little bit of a summary of the overall source so that when you're pulling a quote from a particular essay, we understand what's around that quote. So when you're summarizing something, you're in this case for a particular quote, you're generally not summarizing the whole essay. You're instead summarizing the context that we need to understand in order to understand the quote, right? To get the quote. So if you look here, what it says is you want to make sure that you give us the author. And it does mention that if you've done this for a particular essay and a particular author before the quote in a body paragraph, what that means is you don't need to continue to do it over and over again. So you don't need to be redundant in introducing an author using the ACTs, unless you are giving a new title, right, for a different source and it just happens to be the same author. So think smart, right, in terms of not being redundant as you go through. But anytime you introduce a quote or you introduce a source to us in terms of a paraphrase as well, you want to introduce that with the author. So we'll see that we have the author right here. You want to make sure that you provide us with any information we need to know ahead of time so that we're not caught off guard by in particular by the information presented in that quote. So you've got to give us any information that surrounds it in the essay that you're pulling it from, and then you also need to understand how it connects to broader ideas for that author. So that's really the summary part of things. So I like to think about it like this: is you're giving your reader a heads up that a quote is coming their way. You're providing them with the necessary information in order to play along with you. Okay. So one of the ways I like to think about it is the baseball metaphor. So if I were to just throw a baseball at you in class while you're looking down at your computer, you're not going to understand what's going on. You're going to get hit by the baseball, right? Completely caught off guard. However, if I say, hey, John, right? Or I say, hey, Mary, or I say, hey, you, right? Something like that. Your head comes up. You're automatically a little bit more alert. And now you're ready to catch the baseball. You may not understand, what's happening or why I'm doing it at that point, but nonetheless, you're a little bit more aware. But if I say, hey, catch the baseball and then throw it back to me, now you completely understand the context of what's going on. That's what an introduction does for a quote, is it gives them the context that gives the reader the context for the quote and helps us understand so that we're not caught off guard by it and we can seek to understand it versus trying to play catch up. Okay, there is an example of how you would do that. Just remember, we're using the ACTs for the introduction. It's another way to say that. Now, integration is all about linking your language with the quote and properly getting it put in there grammatically. So you want to think to yourself a signal phrase. And a signal phrase, as you see in number 2 here on that PDF, is just it's an accurate verb and a pronoun or the author's last name. So you want to think about like Miller argues, Miller suggests, Miller proclaims, Miller disagrees, Miller agrees, something like that. So it's just basically a signal phrase. And literally, if you Google signal phrases, you will find a giant list of them to be able to link those within your paper. And you will notice that we've got some in-text citation stuff going on in this PDF. We will be covering that next week, all right? The last part is the interpretation. So it's the unpacking of a quote. It is taking what the quote said and then putting it into your own words. So really what I'm asking you to do is two things with the interpretation of a quote. That means you need to tell me what the quote means in your own words, but also relate it to your thesis, to your topic sentence, and to your idea overall. And that's really the 3 I's in a nutshell. So if we go back to the baseball example for a moment, right? I introduce the baseball and I say, I want you to catch it and I want you to throw it back to me. You catch the baseball, you throw it back because you were introduced to that. The action of throwing it back is the quote itself, right? It's the integration, but you still don't know why you did it. So the explanation of why I threw the baseball as a metaphor for the 3 I's would then be the interpretation of the game, the interpretation of the quote. It's the unpacking of it. So this offers you some examples of that as well. So hopefully you find this helpful in terms of walking through that document. Read it. Let me know if you have any questions, and then hopefully that'll help you write your body paragraph. That's part of the assignment that you're doing for me. Okay, thanks guys.